Hello and welcome. We begin with South Africa, which is grappling with a weather emergency. Floods and heavy snow in the country have unleashed chaos in the eastern areas. Nearly 50 lives have reportedly been lost, and in the disaster, a school bus has also gone missing. The worst impact is in the Eastern Cape province. Torrential rain hit the Eastern Cape city of Mthatha and surrounding areas, submerging homes, cars, and entire neighborhoods. At least 6 people died here in flood-related incidents. Now, a 7th body was found near the Tsolo, around 40 kilometers away. But the most heartbreaking incident, a school bus vanished. It was reportedly carrying students, but according to witnesses cited in reports, 3 children were clinging to trees and clinging for help. But authorities still don't know how many others are missing. A search operation has been launched. Disaster response teams have been deployed across the Eastern Cape, and weather warnings remain in place. The South African Weather Service has issued alerts for more rain, flooding, and even snow in the coming days. This extreme cold front has paralyzed parts of the region. It has blocked major highways and has brought travel to a halt. In another tragic incident, 5 people were killed in a minibus taxi crash, also in the Eastern Cape. Officials say that the driver swerved to avoid a tree that had fallen on the road, likely due to the storm conditions. The vehicle flipped over, killing 5 passengers. Now, Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane called it a devastating reminder of nature's force and warned people to stay alert and to cooperate with rescue teams. In the neighboring KwaZulu-Natal province, disaster teams have been put on alert too. The cold front has brought snow to the mountainous areas, and more disruptive weather is expected in the coming days. South Africa is used to extreme weather, but this week's combination of floods, snow, and storms is unusually intense. Since Monday, several hundred people have been displaced, and almost 300,000 homes have lost electricity in villages and towns across the Eastern Cape. Now, we'll continue tracking this story as rescue teams battle the elements. And for more on this, we have with us on the show Thokozile Madonko, who is a researcher at Wits University. Thank you for being with us.
Good day, and good day to your viewers.
Thokozile, what meteorological factors, for example, climate change trends or regional vulnerabilities, have led to such intense and deadly flooding in the Eastern Cape region, particularly around Mthatha?
So essentially, one of the big kind of, sort of alarm bells that have been going on around climate change and the various conferences of the parties, the COPs, as we refer them to, has been highlighting that many low-lying and vulnerable global South countries are more likely to be impacted by climate change and changes in weather and different types of changes in the weather. So often, people talk about global warming, but the issue is that it is around severe types of weather events. And so you can, as we've seen, this kind of perfect storm, to use a pun, of the bringing together of a weather system that has an enormous impact on an area that is already vulnerable in terms of its geographic and the environmental situation on the ground, so to speak, has also played a role in terms of what kind of infrastructure is available to be able to withstand these kinds of weather events. So it's both a changing situation of the weather, but also the inability of the necessary infrastructure to change in relation to this changing weather and changing weather events.
And talk to us more about this. How equipped are the emergency services and the infrastructure in rural Eastern Cape to respond to natural disasters like this? And what systemic gaps have been exposed by this tragedy?
So essentially, we've seen South Africa, like many other countries across the global south, have a financing gap in terms of being able to both adapt to, mitigate against, and create resilience in relation to climate change and biodiversity loss, because we want to be able to make sure that we're speaking the full kind of impact of what is going on. And so we see that in terms of the budget, and in South Africa, for those viewers that have been tracking the budget this year in 2025, we've had problems with passing the budget. But since around 2012, South Africa has been pursuing a policy of what's called fiscal consolidation, or also known as austerity. And so we've been seeing cuts in the overall envelope of spending towards big important projects like infrastructure spending. So infrastructure spending has been reduced over the last little while, but we've also seen cuts in the ability of key departments and agencies to be able to hire the necessary staff. So what our research has shown is that we are not undertaking what is needed, which is needs-based budgeting. And so we need resourcing and financing. To come back to your question, the Eastern Cape is one of the poorest, it receives a lot, but it's also one of the poorest provinces in the country. And it also has a infrastructure backlog and deficit. And so, just in terms of providing services for everyday needs, it struggles, let alone when crisis hits, like a storm or other kinds of environmental or biodiversity shocks that can take place.
Right. And what long-term psychological and educational impact might such disasters have on the school children, especially those involved in these traumatic incidents, like being swept away or stranded in trees?
Well, climate grief is a thing, and mental health issues around climate has been gaining greater and greater attention, which is absolutely necessary. And we, in the work that we do at the Southern Centre for Inequality Studies, is we're looking at the important nexus between care and care work, and mental health forms part of that, and climate change. And we're seeing that it has a devastating effect on both the physical bodies. So people get injured, they get affected, they get diseases, but all sorts of things happen to them physically, which creates a care burden in some respects on family members. So not only those directly impacted by the flood or the snow or whatever it might be, but also the people who then have to care, the loss of loved ones, and in this case, the tragic loss of children. It's really tragic that their peers have been lost. And so you need, for example, in the South African case, we have the Department of Social Development, which is the custodian of looking after issues around mental health and providing social workers, psychologists, and supporting key NGOs, non-government organizations that provide support, psychosocial support to individuals. And they've just been underfunded. They need more funding. What we really need is a caring state that is able to provide the support that's needed for young people and the elderly and across the age groups to be able to understand what climate change is and biodiversity loss, understand what kind of mechanisms and activities they can undertake to be able to come to terms with what the possible impacts of it are, and then, of course, making sure we have humanitarian support. And the gift of the givers is absolutely wonderful in this respect. They come in, they provide support, and they try and provide long-term sustainable interventions. So it's not just come in for the flood and leave, but provide other mechanisms for supporting organizations. So we're doing more work and paying more attention and research with non-governmental organizations to incorporate care and climate into their work and to provide support for people long-term, because absolutely mental health and climate change is a huge issue that needs to be addressed and funded and financed.
Right. Thokozile, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa and for your valued insights there.
Thank you so much for having me.
Firstpost now available in 9 languages on YouTube. English, $36 trillion.
French,
Le FMI, comme
German,
Geschäftsführenden Direktor
Hindi,
$30 trillion kakarjo.
Indonesian,
Pemerintah tanpa pemeriksaan.
Italian,
Sekali radikali.
Japanese,
$4 trillion ejo mo.
Portuguese,
Por causa do próprio balanço patrimonial.
Spanish.
Beautiful bill.
Go to Settings, click on Audio Track and select a language of your choice. Be the first to know what's happening around you in your first language. Firstpost.